Hey, Shalom Akim, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Makakadash Barakatam, double honors and salutations to the elders and apostles, Grimmage Strong, the Wells, Premnisha, DC Camp, short lesson for the hopeful elect. Yeah, this public utility operations in Babylon is no joke, and when people don't have access to these utilities like your water supply, electricity, uh, what do you call it, trash pickup or whatever. Uh, that's just part of it too. Healthcare, education. All this is so-called basics that you need to have to run a society. Well, if it comes under mismanagement, it becomes a problem. That's the issue that a lot of folks have to deal with. Pollution is no joke, because when you remember the situation over there with oil spills, with Exxon, and then the Exxon Valdez crude oil spill, yeah, you could see that how much damage was done, to the environment, the lives of, these creatures, the pollutions in the air, and then the deep horizon, mess that they keep on how to be dumping Corexit into the water system, to hold that oil from floating up. But it's a pain, we gotta do it, till now because of the Earth is basically on its last leg, man. The level of pollution, the level of contamination is just horrible, and when you think about East Palestine, man, it just makes you wonder how these companies get away with destroying the environment, and then you just leave it into the hands of the Lord. That's why when you read the book of Job 9 and 24, you just have to have some patience, man, because it takes a lot of patience, to hold on, to your sanity. All right, it says Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Yeah, so if Israel is willing to rule the world with so much contempt and bribery and falsehood, with all the propaganda, hiding the true history of the Israelites, you know, you just have to shake your head in amazement. How long will this continue? And then you have all these so-called officials that are on the payroll, bribes, bribes, bribes. The scripture tells you about that. Yeah, the scripture tells you. Yeah, yeah, the scripture tells you clearly, man. Yeah, the scripture tells you, that what you're supposed to avoid, and it becomes a pain, that a lot of people have to live with, So I got a quick precept here. Yeah, that's the American system for you, man. Micah 3:11, the heads thereof judge for reward, and the priests thereof teach for hire, and the prophets thereof divine for money. Yet will they lean upon the Lord and say, is not the Lord among us? None evil shall come upon us. So that's the breakdown of corrupt mindset. When folks take a gift to pervert the cause of justice, that's a problem. That's a problem. We have to deal with on a daily basis. Deuteronomy 16:19. Thou shalt not rest judgment, thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise, and pervert the words of the righteous. So it's a constant, experience you have to observe when you see the the system that's supposed to provide balance and accountability just being ineffective. It becomes a headache for the residents to carry on with their normal lives. But what normal life, man? There is a normal life here in Babylon. So this report tells you about the situation in Texas, where a woman made a post on Facebook about the water supply, and she got arrested by the police over there. And then the charges had to be dropped. And then you just have to be aware that, hey, in Babylon, you know, the so-called constitution don't mean anything anymore, man. If somebody can be arrested for making a post, and then nobody is held accountable for it, that's just another nail in the coffin of Babylon, and that's just part of it. So I'll play the clip and get some more precepts.
So, two people have been arrested and charged for speaking out related to this water controversy, but now charges for both of those people are effectively dismissed.
I cover stories that get ignored.
Citizen journalist Winston Knowles goes by the name Otto the Watchdog.
And I focus on small towns because they need the most help.
And last week,
my name is Winston Knowles.
Knowles' 80,000 YouTube subscribers had live access of his arrest for holding up a sign outside Trinidad Police Department.
So I came out to Trinidad because I found out that the chief of police had arrested a lady for making a Facebook post.
On Wednesday, Fox 4 shared an exclusive interview with Jennifer Combs, a citizen journalist arrested for a Facebook post reading, "We have received reports that..."
See that? Yeah, that's a pain, you're gonna have to live with in Babylon. When the infrastructure is on a D plus rating, you have to pray that you make it to the next day, man. Because so by the grace of the Lord that we're still alive, man. And I get this quick precept. This is from the book of Jeremiah chapter 9 and 15. It says, "Therefore thus said the Lord Yahweh of hosts, the power of Israel, behold, I will feed them, even this people, with wormwood, and give them water of gall to drink." Yeah, so that's that chaos, that the Lord unleashed upon us is also affecting Babylon. And yeah, these folks have to drink, waters with impurities, man. You have to use waters of of contaminated levels of impurity, So it's a problem. It's a daily problem. You hear people talking about lead being in the water, that they have to test the water for lead. You hear about the sewage pipe, you know, fracturing, and all gallons and gallons and gallons of sewage just leaking into the environment. You hear about people catching all types of waterborne illnesses, and it becomes a never ending story of plagues upon Egypt.
Some citizens have been hospitalized due to bacteria in the water. This is a serious public health concern that deserves immediate attention.
There's a lot of people complaining about the water.
Fox 4 has received images from residents of deeply discolored water. City leaders admit there's a water issue that's been going on for years. Still, Chief of Police Charles Gregory believes no one has been hospitalized, and in a social media post of his own, said Combs's post creates fear, panic, or unnecessary emergency response within a community, charging her with felony false alarm or report.
Yeah, so he basically took it upon himself to exert his authority. So it just shows you that the so-called police departments is gonna be becoming more alienated. If I call it separated alienation, from the people of the community. That divide will continue to grow. And you know how it is, man. Sooner or later, they're gonna be at each other's necks because of things like this. So it just makes you wonder. Yeah, that's one thing about when the wicked bears rule. Yeah, so I get one more precept. It's gonna be from the book. Sirach. Yeah, it's just two precepts. Yep, book of Sirach 11 and 7. Sirach chapter 11 verse 7. Blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first, then rebuke. Yeah, that's something I have to apply myself to. Because when you're walking in these systems of Babylon, and you have to learn how to keep your spirit in check. You don't want to be giving out false information. You don't want to be throwing your credibility behind the false reports between between a rock and a hard place. Because people just feel timid, to speak their mind and to stand on the principles of truth. If the report is on point, there is no need to undermine it. Just let it go. Send it forward. It is what it is. There's no need trying to brush things under the rug. All right. So Sirach 11 and 7. Blame not before thou hast examined the truth. Understand first, and then rebuke. So when you have a police chief using the force of his department to deprive a citizen of their freedom, he better have a proper foundation to make such a decision, man. Because stuff like that is very damaging to a person's mental health. So it's just part of it. It's like you're snatching someone's soul away from them. It's like you're holding someone against their will. With the barrel of a gun pointed at their forehead. So that's basically what the system of Babylon is becoming. It's holding the people at gunpoint to give up their integrity, to give up their aspirations for equality, freedom, and stability. You know, yeah. So it becomes a horrible, nightmare.
Combs, who says she was simply trying to investigate, maintains people have reported hospitalization, and the mayor says he's at least seen social media posts claiming the same.
We are in a crisis with the First Amendment right now.
So Knowles protested Combs' arrest with a sign we cannot show on television, reading, expletive, bad cops.
I don't like the bad part of the law enforcement. I like good cops.
18 minutes into Knowles' live stream, he was arrested, charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct for the sign.
What they did to me was so clearly unconstitutional that any reasonable officer should have known better.
On Thursday, however, Trinidad's municipal judge says Knowles' case is being dismissed.
Yep, so that's what happens, man. So it just shows you that the police department don't care about the Constitution. And you know how the the scripture tells you about some things you have to be aware of, man. So this is going to be from the book of Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Yeah, you gotta put it to the test. And that's why you have to you have to pray, man. You have to pray because you have so many individuals in this society that are willing to destroy people's lives just to cover the truth, just to prevent the truth from getting out.
And a Henderson County grand jury no-billed Combs' case, meaning it's dismissed due to a lack of evidence. Now, for unknown reasons, City Hall is closed until next Tuesday, while many wonder what exactly is going on with the water.
A lot of people had no idea that this was going on. Now they do.
The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is investigating the water situation in Trinidad.
Yeah, and now you have restaurants that use water a lot. Oh boy. You have hairdressing salons that use water a lot. So you can imagine all that exposure, So it's just parts of life, to be cautious. But the price, yeah, the price is right, man. The price is right. This system of Babylon is not working for these people, man, and you just have to let it go. So that's the point of this lesson. You just gotta take your public health obligations seriously, man. Don't take it for granted. Public health is no joke, man. You have to be aware of all these pathogens in the environment. All these diseases, man, that's affecting people's daily lives. You have to be aware of it. You have to learn as much as you can about the types of herbal medicines you can use to purge your system of all these parasites, all these contaminants. You gotta have activated charcoal. You gotta have colloidal silver, hydrogen peroxide. Different types of elements in your house. You can have copper, a copper water bottle. Instead of using plastic, you can use ceramics, glass bottles, and all that stuff for your stuff. Don't use aluminum pots to cook. Check your deodorants and all that stuff. It's all part of public health. things you have to know to guide your health. The types of paint is used in your apartment, all that stuff. But hey, there's a limited amount of things you can do, man. You can't cover everything. You can't be walking around with a tinfoil hat, figure of speech, but you just have to be aware that the air you're breathing in is horrible. You cannot be walking around with a mask on your face, with all the filters. Yeah, that's just how it is, man. You just gotta pray that the Lord guides you, man. If you have a autoimmune disorder, then you have to take extra precautions, extraordinary precautions, because you don't want to make your conditions worsen. So, yeah, you just have to be aware. You gotta be circumspect. All right, that's why you have the book of Proverbs, chapter 22 and 3. It tells you, the simple things you have to apply on a regular basis. It says, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. So, you have to apply that principle on a daily basis. That's, something to keep you in check. Shalom.